This is dedicated to all my beautiful queens, all my beautiful ladies out there. She's a queen. Go queen. You got it, girl. She's a queen. You better represent. Go queen. Go queen. Go. She's a queen about her business. Queen. Working hard on a mission. Yeah. Head high, purpose driven. Purpose driven. Crown will never tilted. Queen. Go queen. Go queen. Go queen. Go. Represent. You're a queen. You're a queen. Oh.
So thank you guys for joining another episode of the Q Chat podcast. So today my special guest is Miss Qwana. She's the author of Friend in Your Pocket. And Qwana has a very unique story. You know, obviously yesterday was the George Floyd verdict. And I don't know about you guys, my stomach was in knots the whole time. So Qwana has a very unique story regarding a court case that she went through with police brutality. So I'm actually just going to go right ahead and give her the floor so we can chat about this. So how are you doing today?
I'm great. How are you doing today?
I'm doing good. I'm exhausted. Like I said, yesterday was very draining.
Yes. Yes.
I cried after that verdict. And then, of course, hearing, you know, what happened in Columbus, Ohio. So it, you know, I don't know. So I just want to give you the floor and just explain to everybody, you know, what you're going to talk about, what you went through.
Okay. So you want me to start from the beginning?
Yes, please. Mm-hmm.
Okay. So, again, my name is Qwana Reynolds, and Friend in Your Pocket. It's for a lot of people. And I'm from New York, the Bronx, New York. And I come from a neighborhood where the 46th precinct is very notorious for police brutality. They actually had a case in the 80s where they put illegal chokeholds on a Latino male named Anthony Baez, and they murdered him. And so there was a lot of civil uprising in the Bronx around that time with that case. And so leading up it was always, you know, whether it was Eleanor Bumpers, just different people in the Bronx at that time that were being murdered by the hands of the police. And nothing was done, you know, for them. So I grew up in a place called River Park Towers. It was a place that was privatized for many, many years. So we didn't have any contact with the police when I was growing up because it was a private place and cops could only come if, you know, someone called 911. We also lived on the grounds of Roberto Clemente State Park. So we had state troopers, but we didn't have NYPD. So it wasn't until I was a little older that I understood that the precinct that was by us wasn't even a precinct, it was a task force. And it wasn't until my incident with the cops in 2008 that I fully understood what precinct actually controlled our district, and it was the 46th precinct. So there was a lot of different things. The neighborhood was changing. It was declining. However, the senior citizens, you know, took a vote, and they felt like they wanted the cops to have more control over the neighborhood because they felt like the security guards that they were hiring, that management were hiring, wasn't doing a good job about, mitigating crime. So that's when the drama unfolds. The cops start coming regularly, start getting on elevators with children and asking children, where are you going? There was an incident with a 12-year-old boy who was riding the elevator to go to his aunt's house, as per his mother's request to go get some sugar, whatever the case was. He was roughed up and taken to jail because he didn't have identification at 12 years old. So I don't think that this is going to happen to us, right? So one night it was January, the end of January, first time, my son was coming from that state park that I mentioned earlier. All the kids played basketball. So many different neighborhoods of children would come there and play basketball. It was letting out. And they accosted my son and roughed him up and asked him, did he know where the drugs and the guns were? He's 13. Another neighborhood kid, older kid, was like, hey, that's a good kid. What are you doing? They took that boy and roughed him up and took him to jail. My son was left there with his friends and his cousins. They called me immediately. And they told me that the cop somehow left his hat at the scene of the crime. So I said, don't touch the hat. Just write the numbers down or take a picture of the hat, and we'll go to the precinct to file a civil complaint. We get to the precinct to file a civil complaint. When I explained to the desk sergeant who I am, I hear another detective behind him saying, "Where's the effing hat?" She has the effing hat. Here goes this hat again. We didn't have the hat. I told the kids not to touch it. So we get put into a room with some other officers, Black officers at the time. And then the dispatcher walks in. She comes in and she says, "You know what? You need to get out of here." And I'm like, "Why?" I'm here to file a complaint. These cops, roughed up my son, took his asthma pump and, threw it on the ground, threw all his contents of his book bag on the floor. I want to speak to somebody. She said, "No, call this number," which was the Civilian Complaint Review Board, "and get out of here before something happens." Okay. So the two Black cops, they look at me. I look at my husband. I said, "You know what? Let's just go." So we leave. I filed the complaint. And then within 7 days, I have a complaint on notice. So now me and my husband are taking the kids back and forth to the gym because we don't want any problems. So the 2 weeks to the day, we let up. We don't take the kids to the gym. We let them go. We think the coast is clear. I get the frantic phone call that my youngest son is being arrested by the cops. We run downstairs and I start speaking and appealing to the cop because I'm like, "What did he do?" "Oh, he shoulder checked me as he walked into the store." Now, a 13-year-old Black boy is not gonna shoulder check any cop, okay? So I said, okay, I work for the Department of Juvenile Justice. I show him my ID. I work with the cops. I go to jail every day. I work with a lot of these precincts. And I said, and my husband was a bus driver, is a bus driver, and he had on his uniform. And we're like, we're thinking we're going to get some type of courtesy because we all work for the city and he'll, no. He said, "Well, I just got to take him." And I'm like, "Take him where?" "I just got to take him because he didn't have a car. He's on foot." So now, as we're going back and forth, it almost felt like he would let him go, but he felt conflicted. So now as we're going through this, 2 paddy wagons come and out flies riot control for a 14-year-old boy. The riot squad comes and they're waving ass because now a crowd is forming because we were known as the people in the community that did good. All the kids went to private school. We all worked. We had been in that community for over 28 years and never had problems. So people are saying, "Let them go. What are you doing?" Well, the cops come. They have those long things called the ass, where they look like an antenna. They were beating us with the ass. When the cop came, the cop that did the major damage, his name was O'Keefe. He came and he was dragging my son into the paddy wagon. He pulls him by his hoodie to kind of choke him because he has a book bag on. He's handcuffed, and I said, "Be careful. That's my son." He says, "No, you be careful." I said, "Oh, no, you be careful." Well, I got punched in the face, choked, and eventually pepper sprayed and thrown in the van. My husband was beaten. My little brother was beaten. And all of us were taken to the 46th precinct, where they then took me. Well, before that, we get in the paddy wagon. And you know the story about Freddie Gray, how they broke his neck because they were driving and it comes to a short stop. It's something they like to do. Well, they did that. I bang my head up against the glass of the door. I fall out the seat and no one helps me. Mind you, what I didn't tell you is the 2 Black cops that were there 2 weeks prior are the same Black cops that are sitting in the van as this cop berates me and calls me all kind of B's and how I'm going to lose my job and how, I'm going to jail in front of my son. I asked him, "Could you please stop talking to me like this in front of my child?" And he told me, "Shut up, B." And he proceeded to light a cigar. He lit the cigar, right, like he's celebrating. And I say to him, "My son has asthma. Can you put that out?" He put it out, called me a B again, and we get to the precinct. Now, by the time we get to the precinct, they strip searched me, which was illegal because there, wasn't really any females. They wasn't supposed to strip search me. They took me in a dirty bathroom and strip searched me for what? My son, they kept with the adults. They refused to give my son, they kept with the adults. They refused to give him his asthma pump. And my husband, the same thing. So long story short, they kept my son for 4 hours. They kept my husband and my brother for about the same time. They ran me through the system. They eventually did take me to the hospital because they pepper sprayed me. I had cuff burns on both my wrists. I had a sprain on the left wrist, and I had burns from the pepper spray in my eyes and on my face. They refused to call. They refused to call 911 to get me medical attention. I was there for 4 hours before I got medical attention, to the point where a nice EMS woman named Dawn, she was so upset because I had been sitting with this stuff on my face for hours. And they were, "Oh, we tried to call you." And she says, "How? No one called." Long story short, I go to jail. I'm in jail for 72 hours. You know, the maximum hold time that they can hold you in New York is 72 hours. I was charged with 5 serious charges, the same 5 charges they charge everybody with. It's some of them are harassment, interfering with government administration, a hate crime, because if you hit an officer, that's considered a hate crime. And it was just a crazy experience. However, I always tell people the experience, it did something to me. You know, it woke me up, because I was working with kids in jail all the time. And I would look at their charges, and I had some of their charges. And I was like, wow, these kids aren't lying when they said I didn't do anything, you know, right. And some of them did stuff, you know, for sure. But a lot of them had the same story I now had. So it took about a year and a couple of months for me to go to trial. And they delayed the trial. They kept delaying the trial. And finally, I had a Black judge who said enough, a Black lady judge who said enough. She has to go to trial. She has a job, she has a family, she has to get on with her life. So he finally wasn't on vacation anymore. We go to trial because they tried to offer me 30 days in jail on Rikers Island and felony. Who wants that, right?
Right.
Right. So the trial lasted 5 days. And what they tried to do was they degraded the charges. They downgraded them so that I would only have a bench trial, because the Bronx is notorious for acquitting people who have run-ins with the cops. So they downgraded the charges, and I had a judge. The judge was from the Bronx. He was of Asian and Indian descent. So he understood exactly what was going on. So it didn't work in their favor. I was acquitted of all charges. And, you know, eventually I got my life back. But it was a long, sad, depressing road and full of unknowns, you know? Yeah, and all because you're a parent and you ask the question, why?
Right.
Why turned into so much violence. And I'm just thankful because it was 2 weeks after the Sean Bell verdict. So New York was already, you know, crazy with that, with those cops getting off, and then the cops feeling like they can, you know, attack people and get away with it. So it was all of that energy. And I'm just blessed and grateful that we weren't George Floyd that day, that we weren't Freddie Gray or Eleanor Bumpus, you know, or Admiral Lima, any of those people. We weren't those people, and we were blessed. So I knew that since I got out of that situation, I had to do something to just praise God and just to, you know, just to uplift people. And so that's pretty much, and then I filed a civil lawsuit. Well, let me back up. So once the trial is over, everything is going well. I'm thinking, you know, people are telling me you should move because the cops are gonna have some type of retaliation. And I'm like, no, I'm not moving. My sister's soul just, you know, and I'm like, I'm not leaving. I've been here 28 years. I'll leave when I feel like it. Well, my son comes home one day. He says, Mom, I saw the cop again. And I'm like, no, you didn't see him. They would never put him back in this neighborhood. Well, when I came home from work, maybe a few weeks later, I'm getting off the elevator and I'm getting on and he's getting off. He looked at me with a really wild grin. And I said, okay, I got to get out of here. And we had to leave Jersey because at the end of the day, we got gangs, we have the cops, and then you have your children. And it's, you're thinking the enemy is on one end, and and it's coming from all angles. So we had to move, and we moved, and filed a civil lawsuit. We won a lawsuit, and praise God, I'm here.
Wow. First off,
it's a lot. I gave you the edited version.
it disgusts me just hearing this, but what did it, like, how did you guys just mentally get past it though? I mean, that's terrible. And then one thing for all that to happen to you, but then, I mean, your child, I mean, he's a kid to have to experience that and be treated like an animal. Yeah. So what was the ramifications, like mentally? Like, did you go through any PTSD, any trauma, you and your family? Like, how did you get over this?
Absolutely. My son started suffering with anger issues, and he was a pretty mild, even temperament kid. And so the school, he, like I say, went to a private school all his life. So they knew him, and they knew what we were going through, and they saw a little difference. So I was thankful that the school rallied around him. And what they did, they made him some ID, which was so sad because he felt like he needed ID just to exist. So the school made him a school ID, something they'd never done before. And they just sheltered him. They gave him the love and support. So he was getting it from school, and he was getting it from us. And I mean, to this day, he's 26 now, and he still has a very negative thoughts about the cops. Like, he doesn't, they make him nervous, and I worked in the jail, and every time I would hear the cell opening and closing or hear the shackles, I would just be transported back to that very moment when they were dragging me. And one of the things they did, I mean, they were out of control. They hid my body for hours. They had me in the back of a cop car, handcuffed, and drove me to multiple precincts so no one could find where I was at. And it wasn't until we got to this other precinct on the other side of the Bronx, I had no business being there. My mom, I heard her. She came and she was yelling, "Y'all killed my daughter." She thought I was dead because no one could find me. They had cops looking for me, people that were in the church with them. No one could find me. And so it was just a crazy situation. And it could have went, like I said before, could have went so left, and it didn't. But they did a lot of abusive, traumatic things to us that I don't think you ever get over it. And so when you hear these stories, you just go back to that moment, and you feel, it's a weird feeling because you kind of feel numb. And then you feel like you don't have a right to feel sorry for yourself because you didn't die. And you shouldn't have to feel like that because your experience is your experience, but then your experience feels so small and minute compared to the loss that's going on in the world today.
But with that experience that you went through, and then of course your son experiencing that as a young Black male, and he's still a fairly young Black male now, he's 26. Yeah. Now, the bad thing, of course, these stories keep happening. Yes. And because of the sign of the times, not only do they keep happening, the world sees it because we live in the era of technology. Yeah. So I watched a video yesterday of this poor girl getting shot 4 times. George Floyd, I could not, that's one thing I can't watch it. But, the world sees it. So what does that do to you and your child and your family, though, when these things happen? Do you go through re-traumatization? Because I can only imagine.
Absolutely. You just go right back to those moments. And it was, I forget the gentleman's name. It's so interesting. I was listening to him. He's a reporter, and what was being said was, he was with Sonny Anderson. They were having a great conversation. But what he said was so poignant. He said that when I take pictures with my son, or I say goodnight to my son as he's going out, I don't get to savor those moments like a regular person does, right? We look at it like this could be the very last time we see our children, or our husband, or our brother, or our father, our mothers, whoever. So my son, they always say to me, Ma, that's bad that you think like that. I'm always thinking about death.
Yeah.
And somebody not returning home. You know, so I'm always praying over everybody before they leave the house. I'm taking pictures of them before. Over everybody before they leave the house. I'm taking pictures of them before they leave. And so you don't really realize how the trauma manifests itself in your everyday activity. But when he said that last night, I said, I'm not alone. I'm not crazy. You know, you honestly feel that every moment you spend with your child and your family is going to be the last. That's horrible.
Yeah.
Horrible. And I have friends of many different persuasions. And when I talk to my Caucasian friends or my Asian friends, they can't believe that that's the mindset. You know, and before all of this George Floyd stuff and before it happened to me, and I would try to enlighten them about what it is to be Black in America, they thought that I was, of course, crazy or
exaggerating.
And it wasn't until it happened to me that they're like, how could that happen to you? I said, this is what I've been telling you. And now with all the George Floyd stuff, everyone gets to see we're not making this up.
Right.
We're not making this up. You know, so when you see it, it's just, you know, even down to the Central Park 5, because I knew a couple of those guys. You know what I'm saying? So we in New York, you know, in any place that, you know, when you're dealing with the cops and police brutality, you know what it is. You know, but it's just, you can't explain it.
Right.
You can't explain it. You can't explain the feeling, but I spend every day like it could be our last.
I get it. I mean, like my son just made 20 years old yesterday. And
oh, happy birthday.
Well, that's, you know, but the sad part is, like years ago, I used to work in this office. It was predominantly white, but it was me and just one other Black woman, but we both had teenage sons. And we were trying to explain to some of the other mothers, like, that they don't understand how it feels for us when our child leaves the house, you know, and it's like they couldn't comprehend it. It's like, it's just not the same for us when our child leaves the house. We're in fear. We shouldn't have to feel that way. If our child drives a nice vehicle, we're extra scared. You know, my son left yesterday. I was freaked out, you know, that the verdict was coming in, and I don't live in the most color-friendly town. I mean, I was scared to death. I kept texting, you know, that's a level of trauma we shouldn't have to experience, you know. It's crazy, you know, so I don't know. It's very heavy. It is. What was your thoughts? I mean, like I said, yesterday for me, the minute I heard the verdict came in, like, I just felt sick, like literally, like it was like, oh, the verdict came in. It was like maybe 3 o'clock, and they were like, oh, it's going to be in. They're going to announce it between 3:30 and 4. I literally started biting my nails. My stomach started hurting, because we know we've been in situations where our people haven't gotten any kind of justice. So I wasn't thinking, oh my God, yeah, they're going to find him guilty. I was absolutely in knots. And after they said his verdict, I didn't have the feeling I thought I would have. Like, I literally started crying afterwards, because I'm like, this shouldn't have took place in the first place. I personally couldn't call it justice. Everybody's, oh, well, George Floyd got justice. I'm like, no, if he had justice, he would still be here. So I'm like, the officer was held accountable. You know, like, let's not get it twisted. Like, he didn't get justice yesterday. No. So like, what was your thoughts with everything?
Okay. Well, I'm gonna be honest. I went through the whole year of the protesting. We did some protesting, and what happens is the numbness sets in. So my mom was really like into the trial. I refused to watch it, because whether it went our way or the other way, like you said, I didn't feel like we saw what happened. We don't even need a trial. He's convicted in my mind already. And so are all the other cops that were there, you know, that allowed him to do that. So when they was like, the verdict came in, I didn't follow it yesterday. And I personally know people that are related to him and close friends. And I saw them going to court yesterday, but I had no idea that the verdict was supposed to come in yesterday. And I emotionally have tuned out of a lot of this stuff because it's too much. We've been through so much. So when I finally did learn that, you know, this guy gets convicted and I get a chance to look at his face as it's happening, he has no feeling. He doesn't care. I don't know if he cares deep down on the inside, but I saw no humanity in that man. And that's why I couldn't watch. I didn't want to see other people crying again and the 9-year-old girl reliving the story and the girl feeling guilty, the one who taped it, and the clerk from the store who called the cops. And it just so many just feelings of anger because I immediately went, you know, it's sad because in the Black community, it's like you call the cops to fix a situation or whatever. You know, some people think they're doing the right thing by calling the cops, and it turns out to be the wrong thing. I have a friend who called the cops on her abusive husband, and she wound up shot in the head and in a wheelchair for the rest of her life. So I've seen so many instances where someone has mental illness and the cops will come and kill that mentally ill person for no reason. So I have very strong feelings about when do you call the cops? Would I have called the cops over a fake $20 bill? No. So I kind of put a lot of my anger towards the guy who called the cops, right? And then, of course, the cops get all the anger. But then you find yourself going through all these different range of emotions, and you're like, you know what? It's too much going on. I got to tune out. I gotta unplug from this because I feel too close to the situation. So in this case, I definitely did check out. And other cases, I was all like involved from start to finish. You know, from Mike Brown, you know, I've been fighting with people on social media, people that did not understand why we needed to cancel Christmas that year, or why we needed to, you know, have Black Fridays, no shopping, and how we need to hold back our Black dollars in protesting. And you go through every one of them, and it's just like, this was too much. I did the funeral. I think it was 2 funerals. I did both funerals for George Floyd. I had to just like unplug. It's just been too much. So I'm definitely, I just feel like everything is fake and forced. You know, I felt like he was going to be convicted. I never had a real doubt that he wouldn't be convicted because it's so much pressure. It's too much pressure. I mean, all the Black commercials now, all the Black TV shows now, they're giving us everything they think that we want. Because, okay, let's pacify them. And I just feel like we're being pacified right now. Yeah. I feel like this is the time to keep going, to keep pressing and keep pushing and don't let up. Because, you know, a lot of times they feel like if they throw you a bone, then they'll chill, you know? Yeah, we'll be quiet. People are still protesting and still saying the fight goes on and they're trying to get justice for Emmett Till. And I'm happy for all of that. But I don't feel like that verdict meant anything. You know, because it shouldn't have happened. He shouldn't have felt comfortable to rest his knee on someone's neck. Did you see his face?
Right. He was so passive. And I'm with you. That's why I cried after the verdict, because I was like, this should not have happened. Right. You know, so I couldn't be happy. How can anybody be happy when a man was smothered for 9 minutes in X amount of seconds? You know what I'm saying? And even the trial, I only watched one day of it, and it wasn't even a full day because just like you, I was like, I don't really want to watch this. Exactly. Yeah. But I kept hearing chatter about it. So one evening I was like, let me just turn it on. And it was one of the young women who watched it happen, and she happened to be the EMT, but she was off duty. So, you know, they questioned her. She got her uniform and everything, and she was disgusted. She's like, look, I could have helped him. And I didn't like the way the defense attorney was talking to her. And then afterwards, the judge admonished her instead of the lawyer. I was like, I can't, I just, that's it. I'm out. I didn't watch anymore after that because, and plus when that one segment I watched, I was like, he gonna get off. I just, you know, I didn't know what to think. I was just like, this is not gonna go well because I don't have faith in the justice system. As most Black people don't have faith in it, you know. So I was like, I can't do it. But I didn't expect to react the way I did yesterday. It's just when they said the verdict, my emotion just got the best of me, and I just was sick.
It was visceral. You felt it. It's fine. Right. It happened.
Because I feel like that was, first of all, that was one verdict. That wasn't George Zimmerman. That wasn't the other people that, have hurt people and gotten away. You know what I'm saying? So just like you said, for Black people, we still talk about Emmett Till. Yes. How long ago was that? That's something that will never go away. That's right. For Black people. You know what I'm saying? So I just couldn't, I just had the strangest emotion after that verdict, because I'm like, I just didn't feel what I thought I would feel. Because number one, I also had what I thought I would feel. Because number one, I also had a lot of anxiety, as a lot of Black people had yesterday too, because we didn't have confidence across the board that he was going to get found guilty. So a lot of people had anxiety, like, oh my God, he's going to get off. They kept making references to the Rodney King verdict. I mean, I don't know. This has just been terrible. And then of course, to find out what happened in Ohio with this baby. Okay, that's a baby. Okay, that's a child. And I'm like, I don't know. I just don't know what to think anymore. That's why that yesterday with this George Floyd trial is just, I'm like you, I'm numb, because we know what's going to happen. That's another reason I cry, because I'm like, that's not the end of this. Exactly. Somebody else is going to get killed. And not thinking somebody was going to get killed within minutes, hours of that verdict. But, I don't know what to say. And then even back to your story, I just watched a documentary a few months ago about when Yusef Hawkins was killed in New York. I'm from the South, so people generally associate racism with the South. They don't necessarily think, and back in the day, people thought like up north or whatever is just the promised land. And when I watched that documentary, I mean, I knew, obviously, because we all know stories of Amadou Diallo, we know that, but just watching, Yusef Hawkins, that had been happening, but just watching the documentary, I was like, wow, they broke down everything in New York. And I was like, damn, I didn't know it was, like, I knew it was ugly, but damn, it's.
I remember that.
So
I remember that case. It was awful. And a lot of people, some people that were involved are successful human beings now.
Yeah, they found one of them was working at one of those radio stations. I can't remember. I mean, I just, I don't know. Like I said, I think everyone is just mentally exhausted. We're all drained. I would argue down with somebody if they tried to tell me that all Black people don't suffer from some level of racial PTSD. It's scary, and I mean, like I said, I have two boys, so I also have a daughter. So now it's not even like, oh, well, we just scared for our sons. No, I mean, this is a 15-year-old girl. It's like, I don't know. So barreling back, because like I said, I'm personally drained, but just barreling back to everything that you've been through. So now you have this platform where you do encourage people, you do offer wisdom. You wrote your book, Friend in Your Pocket. You also talk about veganism and you sell sea moss and everything. What was, obviously, you went through an amazingly traumatic experience, just as a Black woman, as a Black mother, you were working for a noble job for the state, you're being a civil servant.
Yes,
and you get betrayed in a sense, you know what I'm saying? So how do you channel that to just be what you're doing now? You're trying to pour that out and offer some encouragement and wisdom to other people. So how did Friend in Your Pocket develop? How do you just maintain, to give back emotionally, in a positive way?
Well, it was so interesting, and that's a great question. Friend in Your Pocket was born on Facebook. So as I was going through that year and change of the unknown, I would just put little quotes out, and people would say, oh, that's good. You should write a book. That should be in a book. So every day I would do it, and they didn't know I was writing a book. And depending upon how I got responses, those are the ones I put in the book. Some I didn't, I omitted or whatever, but they were my therapy. Me talking to my Facebook friends was my therapy. And then I was writing it down and I was showing my family and then I would take it to work. And what do you think about that? Or what do you think about this? And it got a lot of good feedback. So I said, you know what? Most of my popular posts, I will now put into a book. And one day we were coming home. We had already moved to New Jersey. And I told my mom, I said, I got a name for the book. I said, it sounds a little funny, but this is the name. And she's like, what is it? I said, Friend in Your Pocket. And she says, no, I like that. I said, yeah, because my great grandma Eliza Jenkins, she used to give me the Daily Word every Saturday. Little book, spiritual book she would get from her church, and she would just make sure that I had one every Saturday. And if I missed a Saturday seeing her, she'd put it in the mail. And it was just encouraging words from Bible verses and little hymns and stuff like that and I don't know if it was for children, but I don't think it was. I think it's for adults, but I was able to understand it. And so I would carry that little book with me all week long and wait till the new one came and put that new one in my pocketbook. And I'm saying, you know what? This will be for grandma, because I want my book to be that level of encouragement that you can carry with you wherever you go. And no matter what page you open it, it's going to mean something to whoever reads it. And I want it to be that impactful. And it was. And people said, well, you should write a story about your life and what happened. So I did do a couple of, pages about what happened on February 2nd, 2008. I wrote about that night and how this inspiration, this was the inspiration that escaped the darkness of that night. That night opened up a whole new portal. I couldn't see it at the time. I was just angry. I was sad. I didn't know what was going to happen with my job. I didn't know a lot of things. And I was talking to my daughter-in-law yesterday. At the time, I was filling out an application to become a federal probation officer. I wanted to step up. So that was the screen that was on my computer the whole time I was in jail or whatever. But when I got out, I said, well, that's over with. And I had to X that out. So it changed the trajectory of my life in a lot of ways. I was just getting comfortable with working with the police and going to court every day and going to jail. Because when you grow up in the neighborhood I grew up in, who wants to be a cop, or who wants to work with the cops? Because you feel like you're betraying the community. But I felt like our children needed more people that look like us working with them, because we understand their problems. We're not just going to pat them on the back and say, oh, you've been through so much stuff. We're going to talk to them and give them that real conversation. So I wanted to be that person that when they walk through those doors, they felt safe with. So that's why I took the job. And so, for me, working with the kids, and they actually were a good focus group for me, because I would bring pages to the kids. And then we would read it and have a round table discussion about it. We break it down. And so they gave me a lot of good information and feedback. And by the time the book was written and pressed up, they were fighting over that book. And I couldn't keep enough copies in the facility, because the kids would go home and they would take the book and I'll have to keep replacing them. So it really, 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 really gave me a new life. It gave me a new purpose, because I knew that I was bigger than my job at this point. Because I had worked with over 2,000 kids. So now I'm like, when you've done all you can in the space that you're in. I've grown that space. And so Yahweh God, he was putting me on the path to opening up and being more accessible to other people, and giving what I give to children and their parents and their families to more people. And I had to be willing to accept it. I was really scared. I didn't think, who wants to hear from me? Who cares about what I have to say? With so many people that go, these colleges and get the PhD and the doctorates, who wants to hear from a girl from the Bronx, right? But I always knew that, that if I can touch a thug, a so-called thug, and I can touch a pastor and everybody in between, then I know I'm on to something. And I knew I had to, I had to go with it. So that's what gave me the driving force to keep going. Because when you're thinking about wanting to be depressed and sad, I had to look at my own childhood and all of the stuff I overcame in childhood, from molestation and feeling abandoned and abused. Both my parents were, in the life. I had to overcome so many things. So I couldn't let this beat me. This was just another thing. And I think for Black people, again, it's always just another thing that we have to get over, that we don't get help for, that we just get over it, and then we do something else. And so I wanted to tell people that it's okay to take a pause, to not just get over it and move on to the next thing. Actually examine what's going on with you. Why do you think the way that you do? Because I also knew a lot of people who suffer with anger issues, and they would not understand where the anger was coming from. And I always say, whenever you lose your keys or something, what do they tell you to do? Whenever you lose your keys or something, what do they tell you to do? Backtrack your steps. Backtrack your steps of your life, and you will find a lot of your issues come from childhood. It all comes back from another place. And so now we got to find out where we lost ourselves or where it got messed up at, and then work our way back up. So that situation, again, forced me to really examine my life and what I want to do with it. So I was just, again, so ever so blessed. Who wants to keep being blessed by trauma? But I was blessed by it.
Yeah.
And sometimes I say I'm hard-headed. Maybe sometimes God has to make me, shake me to do certain things, and he does.
I like how you said you were blessed by trauma, because I've had some past episodes where we talk about that. I've been through a few traumatic experiences, which birthed this whole me running my mouth to people, with this whole platform. And it is a form of my own personal self-therapy, So, but I like how you said blessed by trauma, because that's another unique way to turn, those scars into something beautiful, those emotional trauma that we've been through. And I think that's a unique way to put it, to say blessed by trauma, because unfortunately, like you said, a lot of us, we go through so many things, and to view it like I always tell people, I count everything all joy. Even if something bad happens, I count it all joy. There's a lesson in everything. So I love how you say blessed by trauma.
Thank you.
So in addition, I know another one of your platforms is with veganism and selling sea moss. And I know right now, obviously with the pandemic, I think a lot of us had to look into just how we treat our bodies, how can we handle ourselves, health wise, if this virus attacks us, or, just to prevent it. And, my personal thoughts with the vaccine are not the popular opinion. I personally need more research before I let anything go in my body that the government, I'm sorry, people don't like me saying it, I'm sorry. That's my opinion. So, and I also feel like sometimes we too quick to do what the government tells us as opposed to taking care of our own bodies. I know some people that don't drink water. You don't drink water, but you're going to get this shot. It's like, this doesn't, I'm just saying, we got to take care of our bodies. So what's your platform as far as, veganism and sea moss? Because I've heard so many things about sea moss and the benefits, for the body. And that's one thing I love for our people. But promote it, girl. That's why I love how our people are taking control of our health, and looking at natural alternatives. So can you educate people who may not be familiar with sea moss, and educate us too on what have you picked up as far as the health benefits on going vegan, and with everything that combines using sea moss too. So can you educate some of us that aren't familiar?
Absolutely. So back in the 90s, I was vegan from the early 90s on to the early 2000s. For about 13 years, I did veganism. And why I chose to go vegan back then, I was at City College, and I went to our Black Studies department would always have speakers come in. And this guy, he was so, I can never remember his name, but he was absolutely fabulous. And he broke it down in such a way that it made sense for me not to eat meat anymore. He said, when they kill an animal, all the neurotoxins that went, the fear, the scaredness, the sadness that the animal felt is now transferred into you. And it just made sense that if you kill something and it had a traumatic death, I don't care what kind of death it had, it was a peaceful death. They try, it just made sense that I will inherit some of what was in that animal because you're eating the flesh. And if we, if you look at the Bible, flesh of my flesh, right? So, we're after his heart. So if you adopt someone's heart or their flesh, then you can become who that person is, right? The spirit. Mm-hmm. And so it made sense. I was having some weight issues back then. And I said, you know what? I'm going vegan. And it started off with taking away, I was raised Muslim, my younger years. So I never had pork. I had stopped eating beef because, we were having some issues with beef, bad beef we kept getting. And again, the signs are always there. I had 3 strikes with beef and I said, okay, I'm done. So we stopped doing beef. So it was just a matter of chicken and fish and just a lot of the garbage that we were eating. So I stopped. And I did really good, but I was actually doing a lot of counterproductive things like becoming anorexic and just like, because when you learn that you can manipulate your body and you can say, okay, I'm 180 pounds. Next week, I want to be 60 or 70 pounds. And you can actually do it. It's powerful and it's scary if you don't have the information. So I followed Dr. Sebi back then. And so I started, after I got over the whole anorexic thing, because I wanted to be so skinny, I wanted to be slim, I wanted a flat stomach. I had a son young. And so I got over that. I started taking my supplements and my vitamins and, my hair had stopped growing. My nails had stopped growing because I wasn't doing it the right way. So what was the point of going vegan if I was going to do all these other bad things behind it? So I stayed vegan. I got it together and it was going great until my husband fried a piece of chicken. Because see, I was the only person in my house that was vegan. And so I fell off the bandwagon. And for the next 10 or so years, I was eating meat again. Well, in that time, I packed on over 150 pounds, all of what I lost and then some. And knees, inflammation, could barely walk. I slept in pain. I was in pain, sleeping hurt, everything hurt, standing up hurt, walking hurt, sitting down, walk. So I said, you know what? Something has got to give. So I took away coffee. I started just taking away things anything that I researched that I felt like could be contributing to my poor health. I was going to the doctors. Oh, you just need to lose weight. And I'm like, I've been, big for most of my life now. And your knees just don't stop working. Like you don't go to sleep walking and wake up where you can be in a wheelchair in a few months if you keep it up. So Dr. Sebi died. And this is what I tell people all the time. The day he died was the day I got my life back. Because I said to my family, I said, I'm going to do a fast in honor of Baba Sebi. I'm going to do this fast and I'm not going to do it for 21 days. So they say 21 days creates a habit. I said, I'm going to do it for 22. And if by the 22nd day, maybe it'll be a lifestyle. 22 days came and went. It's been almost 6 years. Wow. I've lost over 100 pounds. I'm walking. Yesterday I was riding a bike. I'm doing all these things that I couldn't do. I was so ashamed. I couldn't even get on the floor. And my son was like, Mom, stop playing. I said, I don't know how to get down on the floor. The simplest thing of getting down, sitting Indian style, what we all did in school, when your body gets to a certain point, the only way you see yourself on the floor is if you fall. So I wanted to have more control over my body. I started doing lymphatic yoga, kinetic yoga, kundalini yoga. All those things helped to get me back, coupled with veganism and CMOS, because I needed all of those things to work in tandem. So I tell people all the time, you know, I have a lot of people that don't eat vegan, they eat regular, and they smoke or they drink hookah, they doing everything. But they come and get their CMOS faithfully because they say, I know it's helping me.
Mm-hmm.
Because for people that smoke heavy, it helps rid the bronchioles of a lot of inflammation, the mucus that they get, that dry cough that a lot of smokers get. It has helped a lot of people with that. I've helped a lot of friends with hypertension and diabetes. I was able to get my mom off her diabetes medication by, you know, helping her change the diet. She went vegan cold turkey for about 6 months. She couldn't do it. She had to go back to fish. So she went back to fish and just like in eggs and butter. She loves butter. But, you know, I was able to get her back on track, you know. And I just think that it just helps so much. And all of this was leading up to the pandemic. I had no idea a pandemic was going to happen. Had no idea. I'm so, like I said, again, I'm grateful to Dr. Sadie, and obedience is key. I'm happy that I was obedient to the Holy Spirit because I started boning up. I always collected essential oils, but then I started buying more and getting this one for that illness or whatever. And so by the time the pandemic happened, I had an arsenal. And so by the time the pandemic happened, I had an arsenal of herbs, of oils, teas, all type of tinctures that I had been creating and having, I guess, in preparation for a time like this. But I had no idea what was going to happen. And so I was able to help a lot of people with the CMOS. My husband drives the bus. He's an essential worker. He lost a few friends. I mean, they lost a lot of people, but he lost a few close friends. And one of the guys that we lost, just the week before he died, we were talking about, he was from the Allens, and he was always talking about milk is good for you. And I'm like, no, it's not. And we was going back and forth about CMOS and milk and blah, blah, blah. And he was, unfortunately, one of the first guys who passed away. And then another guy, he was on the brink, and we were able to get him back. So I just always say, I wish he would have, thought more about it. But these are the things that we're taught from a youth. And I tell parents, give your children habits that they don't have to change when they get older, because it's so easy. We eat a certain way, and how they say, oh, y'all all look the same because y'all eat out the same pot. And it's the truth. A lot of our diseases are not hereditary. They're just our lifestyle, So if your grandmother made ham hocks and pig snouts and tails and this and that and the third, then the likelihood that you're going to do it, you're going to pass it down. And these are some of the things that we pass down to our children. And so I'm happy that I never had the slave diet completely, but that's not our diet. That was not our way of life in Africa. We didn't eat the way that we eat now. And that was something that the Europeans did to us again. And so in protest of not wanting to live that way, I've changed my life.
You said a word. You're right. And I say it all the time. A lot of us as African Americans, we don't realize, but we follow traditions that was placed upon us in slavery. That's why I always tell people, do your research on what our ancestors did before we were stolen and colonized, because we don't realize we just repeating the same cycles. We can't use the same breath and say we're woke, but then do what the slave masters taught us to do. That don't go. So I always tell people, just in any aspect of your life, make sure you try to research back to what the ancestors did first. Because like I said, I just think it's an oxymoron. You can't say you're woke and then we do what the slave masters taught us. That's just something that's in my evolution in the past few years has really emblazoned in my mind. I just feel like, it's a lot of education that could save us, So I normally do end the show with asking the guests, how do you define a queen? But I want to do something a little different with you, because I know, like with Friend in Your Pocket, it started with you doing motivational posts. So instead of really ending the show with how do you define a queen, could you instead like leave us with one of your inspirational quotes just to make us feel better, I guess, just to give us something to think about, whatever you want the quote to be. But instead of how do you define a queen, can you give something to the queen community instead, from the friend in your pocket?
Okay, wow, that's so hard. I have so many things I love to do. But one of my it's a couple of them. But one of them that really stuck is determination determines your destination. And the determination of everybody who has been protesting got us to this destination where we're at right now. And I feel like, wherever you put your energy, that's where everything is going to flow. That's where you put your energy. So I feel like if you're determined to do anything at all, and you keep going, your destination will be where you want to go. And we just can't get stuck getting started. I think a lot of times we get stuck getting started, and I'm guilty of that. I'm guilty of procrastination is a drug. It's an addiction. So I would say to the queens out there, don't get stuck getting started. Determination determines your destination. Because what you put in is what you get out. And sometimes what you put in, if you put in that work, like the stock market, you may get more out of even what you put in, but you got to put forth the effort. So I just say, stay determined, stay encouraged, and, let's pray away that procrastination demon, because it's a demon. And I think a lot of us have so many things to offer. We just have a lot of self-doubt. We don't think that we can do it. We don't think it'll work. People don't support us. But you know how they say, if you do it, they will come. Your tribe will find you. Like we found each other. So it happens. You will find that like-minded community. Just keep going.
I love it. I love it. I love it so much. Thank you so much for just having this conversation. Like I said, the timing was perfect, actually. I know we had some bumps, but like it's divine alignment. I believe in that so much. I believe in spiritual alignments. I just feel like there's no mistakes. I just feel like the people that we come across, it's just meant to be. Like there's no mistakes at all. Like it's like a constellation. Everyone that we come encounter with, it's meant to be. So before we end everything, go ahead and tell everybody how they can find you, give them your social media handles, everything, in case someone wants to get in contact with you. And I definitely want to encourage people to follow you. So go ahead and give everyone how they can contact you.
So you can find me on Facebook, Qwana Reynolds, or Friend in Your Pocket Conversations. You can find me on Instagram on Friend in Your Pocket, all regular spelling. You can also find me _FIYP on Twitter. And then you can buy CMOS, or you can buy books on my, let me get that there. Let me get the CMOS there. You can buy these products on friendinyourpocket.com. And thank you for having me. And like you said, God makes no mistakes. He makes executive decisions. Everything is divine appointment.
I love it. And I'll definitely be checking out that CMOS, because I've been doing research. Like it's been like I guess being at home, research hound, So I definitely been trying to get down with CMOS for a long time. So
you know what? You send me your information and I'm going to send you some. And I'll walk you through the process. Very easy. You put it in your tea or a smoothie or whatever, and two tablespoons, 2 to 3 times a day, and you're gonna see a difference. Awesome. It has a lot of fiber, a lot of BMs. You get a lot of stuff moving in your body.
Good. That's perfect. So
I look forward to servicing you and servicing the community. I look forward to it.
Awesome. Thank you so much again, guys. So just, I know this is a tough time for everyone, but I hope you guys took some things in from this conversation, from Ms. Qwana. And once again, like she said, I know it's hard to understand when you're going through something, but there is blessing in trauma. I know it's hard. I know some people probably was like, that doesn't make sense. It really does if you think about it. I say it a lot. I count everything all joy. There's a lot of things I've experienced. If I had to do it again, hey, I can't say I would have wanted to have that battle, but there's a divine purpose. We all have an alignment for some reason. When we come into this earth, I feel like that destiny is already there. What God wants us to go through, even when it doesn't make any sense at all. So just remember, guys out there, whatever you're dealing with, it gets better. Just try to find that blessing in that trauma, you know, and that helps you find your purpose. You know, when these people did the terrible things they did to Qwana and her family, they didn't think that she was going to fight back, you know, so just find that fighter spirit in you and just rise above it, whatever you can. You know, it's possible for us to just move forward and find a blessing in the purpose. So thank you guys again for joining the Q Chat podcast. Go ahead to www.GeauxQueen for more information. And please follow Miss Qwana, and everybody stay safe. And remember to go love yourself.